Hello. Hello, I don't think everyone heard the one. Hello, everybody. We are back for our, well, kind of like biannually almost at this point with our dev streams, but I think we did a couple this year, didn't we?
I would do a few.
Yeah, like my joke just doesn't work anymore. It's not even like every 2 months now. Um, anyway, how's it going, everybody? We're here and excited to show you some of the features that we will be working on, or well, we have been working on that we'll be launching with our next update. There's lots to talk about, so I'm gonna just kind of hand it off to Mark really early here, and we'll get started and show you some cool stuff.
Yeah. So welcome to the 2024 annual stream. It's fun to do these every year. This is sort of the big event that we work towards throughout the year, even though we have the other updates, and we're excited to be back again. Last year we had naval warfare, and the previous year we had Inferno. And while this year's annual update will not be at the scale of those updates, as we mentioned, rest assured the future of Foxhole is bright, and there's a lot to talk about. So we'll just get right into it. But before we start, I did want to talk about something, a little neat side thing that we've been working on here a couple of months ago. Well, maybe more than a couple months ago, or in the year, someone on the team had pitched the idea of doing a bit more on the merch side. It's not really been our thing so far, but he had this idea of making patches that he was really passionate about. And we talked about it. I wasn't entirely convinced at first, but after some discussion, we decided to give it a shot anyway. So we prototyped a few of them, and they turned out to be pretty cool. We gave away some of these for the art contest, sort of as a prototype. But as the next step, we're going to be producing a limited run of these patches, which will go on sale later this year. There's going to be four variants initially. There's going to be the colonial flag, the warden flag, the Seavish Naval Command patch, and the Republic Coastal Legion patch. So look forward to them. If you guys like them, we'll consider doing more of this in the future. And if you don't, we're going to have a bunch of them sitting around the warehouse, and we'll send them over to Matt's house and he can use them as coasters or something.
Sounds
So
good.
yeah, no, but seriously, if you like this sort of thing, be on the lookout. It'll be a limited run at first, and we'll see how it goes. So next thing is to get into a review of the roadmap. Um, for some context here, especially those that joined us this year, the past 2 years we did big expansion style updates for Foxhole. We did Inferno, where we added trains, facilities, fire, and naval warfare. We added towing, obviously expanded on the naval game and expanded the world. And after naval, we said in the dev blog we're gonna take a bit of a break from the big updates and instead focus on refinement of existing features. That's what we've done this year in the three updates. And that brings us to the fourth update now and final one of the year. And like I said, the biggest difference between this annual update and the last 2 years is this annual update is also going to be focused more on going back to refine existing features. But that's not to worry. The next expansion style update is already under development, and things have been taking off quite nicely over there. So we hope to talk about that um, in the not too distant future. So without further ado, this year's annual release will be the infantry update, and that is an overhaul of infantry gameplay to make it more tactical, more team oriented. So I'm going to hand the reins over to you, Max, to talk about some of the goals for the infantry update.
Yeah, sounds good. Hi guys, it's been a while. This is the infantry update that has people have been asking for many years. The last time we touched infantry, we implemented like the cover system. So those of you who don't remember, who have always seen cover as being a thing in this game, that's how long it's been since we've really done a focus on the infantry updates. So these are the main goals. We wanted to increase just basically the play space of infantry. And we wanted to integrate facilities, all of the existing systems for our game. We wanted to bring them all into infantry and get this all up to speed. I want to preface this with, you're going to see a lot of stuff in this update that might not seem directly related to infantry, but I want to assure you that all of the changes that we select, or almost all of the changes that we selected in this update, we did it with the intention of bringing the infantry play space into the forefront. That means changing some of our existing systems around, stuff that might seem completely unrelated. Again, we'll try our best to explain our reasoning for making changes there. All right, the first thing is weapon shouldering. So this GIF you're watching is an extreme example, but the idea is if you're low on stamina, your weapon will shoulder slightly slower. Dynamic stagger. So no longer is it basically a one or nothing. If you get shot, the more damage that is dealt to the player, the slower they'll go. So it's more so it's like linear. So light weapons like pistols won't stagger you as much. There is a new modifier as well. So some weapons will just stagger you more than others, but yeah.
So like
Just going back-
stopping power has like an effect on like how much you're staggered.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
I do have a quick question about the weapon shouldering. Now, does this impact different weapons differently, or is it similar?
Yeah, similar. So the different weapons will be shouldered faster than others, like the assault weapons, these SMGs. They'll shoulder much quicker, and will be impacted less by stamina. And again, I want to reiterate that it looks really slow in this GIF, but that's the extreme example. We don't expect it to change your moment-to-moment gameplay that much. So like, don't expect like a huge change in the way that you run and take cover and take shots.
Right. This visual here was designed to show you that it can be slow, but this is not how regular gameplay is going to be in an average.
That's like the worst case.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
Vaulting improvements. This is something we've just been needing to do for a long time. Some of our structures were difficult to vault. They just didn't really work very well. So we've just gone across the board and improved it. We also added a little feature where if you hold down the space bar, then it will attempt to vault when you are able to. So you don't have to spam the space bar when you're trying to get over something.
Right.
Machine gun suppression. So the way suppression works in our game right now, once you are suppressed, you don't regain your accuracy once you've lost it, but you don't actually lose accuracy for being suppressed. So we've changed machine guns to be the opposite of that. So what happens now is if you're getting shot at by a machine gun, your accuracy will get worse. That reticle at the end of your aim line, that will bloom and get bigger if you're getting shot at by a machine gun. So this will enable all of the machine guns, anything that uses machine gun ammo, this includes like tanks, will now be able to more effectively suppress an enemy before, say, an attack. Infantry encumbrance, I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but we've made some pretty sweeping changes to infantry encumbrance. And same goes for the next slide, which is the stamina changes. I'll talk about this a little bit more later.
Right.
Muddy vehicles, we promised this in the last update. Vehicles can now get muddy when they run through puddles. This is important for anybody who may not have played this most recent patch. Vehicles don't get muddy all the time anymore. You have to drive through a puddle and that will get you muddy. So this means that you could avoid getting muddy by avoiding puddles. So this affects rainstorms and the weather system. And for the muddy vehicles, it affects the encumbrance on the vehicle, which I'll talk again a little bit more later with the infantry update, or with the infantry encumbrance. One thing that's not really featured in this GIF is you can also clear the mud off the vehicle by splashing water on it. So you can throw buckets of water on it and splash it with fire trucks, and that will clear the mud. Stealth changes. So this has been a long time coming. When you're in a bush and you take a shot, you'll now appear for for a moment. So there's not just bullets flying out of bushes anymore. There's one nice little change here that we changed for vehicles. If you're in a vehicle, you won't see infantry popping up like this. You'll still see it the way it always has, where it's difficult to tell exactly where the shot's coming from. So if you're in a tank, you won't see the infantryman pop out. If you're in an open-topped seat, then you will. So somebody like a commander might have a better visibility on these players that are popping in and out of concealment than, say, the gunner inside the front, inside the tank. Green ash changes. So green ash is much different now. It no longer hits you and staggers you immediately and is essentially a death sentence. Instead, green ash will drain your stamina first. So even if you don't have a gas mask, you're not going to die outright. It'll drain your stamina until you reach 0, and then if you don't have a gas mask, you'll die. Or you'll start to take damage, same as before, but again, no staggering. The gas mask also, we made it lighter. It's a little less like of a burden to equip to your character, but it reduces your stamina regeneration overall. So you won't regenerate. So it's a small stamina regeneration for wearing the gas mask. Grenades. We also nerfed the grenade range. We felt this was suppressing, or this was oppressive for the infantry experience. There was just grenades flying everywhere, especially at night. So their range has been dramatically reduced, and they now drop if you have primed them. So if you're trying to throw a grenade and then somebody shoots you, the grenade will drop on the ground and then go off. This might have a disproportionate effect on things like HE grenade rushes. So just be aware of that.
All right. Let's move on to the nitty gritty.
All right, so I promised you guys earlier that I would talk a little bit more about stamina and encumbrance changes. So this is it. If you want to, so in infantry today, if you want to become, there's 3 things you're going to have to master to get good at infantry gameplay. The first is you're going to have to manage your stamina now. This is far more important now than it was before. It's important for your shouldering times. It's important for your sprint speeds and green ash attacks and other things. You're going to have to learn the weapons. Because of these new stats with dynamic stagger and weapon shouldering, because there's more modifiers on a per weapon basis, you're going to want to master different weapons for different situations. And the last is encumbrance. Encumbrance is going to have a much more important role on your moment-to-moment combat, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But if you could pull up the graphs, there we go. I added some graphs. Oh, can we go back to the graph?
Trying to go back. There we go.
So these are the 2 really important changes you guys need to understand for how infantry has changed. And if you're going to give any feedback, you need to understand this. So pay attention. The way that stamina used to work is that the higher stamina you had, the faster you would go. And then as you lost stamina, you would lose speed. We've shifted this graph up slightly. So stamina is more important, or you'll get more speed for the same amount of stamina than you did before. The trade-off here in the second graph is that encumbrance now affects your stamina. So in the past, you could wear up to 99% or 0%. Your stamina would be the same every time you sprinted. It didn't matter. Instead, now encumbrance will reduce the amount of stamina, or it will increase how quickly you lose stamina and also how fastly you regenerate it. All right. So as hopefully you guys get that. If you don't, we're gonna go over it some more in the Discord later in the Reddit Q&A. So here's the encumbrance changes. This is perhaps more important, but could you actually pull up the slides? You guys can read the bullet points on your own. They are important, but they're not. To carry on with this description, what we've changed is that in that first graph, everybody sprints at the same speed now. So many of you guys might have noticed that if you were under 17% encumbrance or some magical number, you would run significantly faster than somebody over that percent. This was exploited to great effect for people who are doing like bayonet rushes, who would just equip like a rifle, an ammo, and a bayonet. Now everybody runs at the same speed, regardless of how much stamina or how much encumbrance you have. Until, of course, the weight. But it's important to note this first graph is about sprinting in a short distance. So this is like from sprinting from cover to cover. This is what you could expect. You're going to sprint slower overall at the lower encumbrance values, but you're going to be going faster than you would have before under the new system. So it's more of a, it's just flat. Where this changes is in the second graph here, which is over long distance. So remember in that first slide, I talked about how stamina is impacted by your encumbrance. So while it is that you are running faster or slower, depending on your encumbrance, the amount of speed that you're going to get over the long distance should be about the same as it is in live, because the more encumbered you are, the less encumbered you are, the farther you can sprint. So in the past, if you were at 0% encumbrance, you would sprint much faster. But in the new system, the less encumbrance you at 0% encumbrance, you're not going to run as fast, but you will be able to sprint further.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of nuanced questions about how all this stuff works, and we'll answer them at the Reddit Q&A and on the Discord at that branch. Great.
Yeah. So the bottom line, the last thing I want to say, that's hopefully, if you didn't understand any of that, what I want you guys to understand is encumbrance affects how far you can sprint now, not your speed. All right, and then moving on, vehicle encumbrance. This has been changed to be much more similar to infantry. The ideal here is that you shouldn't really feel a difference for trucks. They should feel pretty much the same as they always have. We just changed that middle point, so how you get encumbered at the beginning and end, or in the middle. But most of you guys are either driving with a completely empty truck or a completely full truck, and you'll notice from this graph that it's exactly the same. So you shouldn't really notice a difference for these vehicles.
Right. So to calm any major concerns over logistics, it should overall be roughly a similar experience.
Yeah.
Great.
So important, if you guys want to know more about the encumbrance system for both infantry or vehicles, the tooltips have been changed. So make sure you read those. That 0% to 100% number that's in the top right of your inventories, that is completely new. It's going to be deeply confusing for everybody who's been playing the game for a long time. But if you read the tooltip, it should be a little bit more clear.
And an important point is why we've made these vehicle encumbrance changes now is, I remember, Max, we were discussing how this is happening now because the encumbrance system for infantry has changed. So we also needed to um, revisit the same thing for the vehicles to make sure that one wasn't heavily impacted and the other one was not, right?
Yeah, we want it to feel the same across the board. Right now, in the live game, these were two completely different encumbrance systems. Hard to tell how one worked and the other didn't. Now they should be much more unified. Everything should make much more clear sense. And ideally, we shouldn't see too much of a change in the actual performance of the vehicles in the infantry, just the nuances.
Great. All right, moving on to some infantry related user interface changes here.
Yeah, back to the exciting stuff. I've been waiting for this for years. That squad leader arrow finally points to where you need to go. So you can actually find your squad leader anywhere in the map. It was somewhat broken before, so people didn't really use it outside of like really close distance. But now you can actually find each other. So if you're looking for your squad, you can find them.
Yeah, it works across the entire region, whereas before it only worked around a small radius around your character. But it just as a side note, it still does not cross over regions. But as long as you're in the same region as your squad leader, you'll be able to see this.
This is something people have been asking for a long time. Is just a minor bit of aim assist to aim at trenches. This is I shouldn't use the word aim assist. It's an aim adjustment. All this does is that when your mouse cursor is over top of an enemy, the elevation will change slightly so that it can overcome that obstacle. it's still going to be very difficult to hit somebody in a trench. It's not like this is going to completely change how easy it is to kill somebody in a trench. It's just to avoid needing to aim at the back wall just to try to get the cursor just right. It'll still be very hard to hit these people, and somebody that's moving around in a trench, again, it's still going to be quite difficult. It just meant to smooth over this, make it a little bit easier for newer players to get into combat. And map search, we just needed to do this for a long, long time.
Yeah, we actually have a video for this, which I will bring up here.
Underrated feature.
Great.
I love that we did a whole video for that feature. We knew it was that important.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the community has done an amazing job with various websites to that players can use, and you should continue to use them for the other functionality. But good to see that search is in the game now, and yeah, it's been something that should have been there for a while. Finally, happy to get that in here. Oops, there we go.
Okay, so item loadouts. This is, again, another feature people have been asking for literally years. As I said in the previous slides, encumbrance is now a much more important value, and so now you need to manage your kits a little bit more carefully. So we've added a loadout option that you can go to a bunker and you can save your equipment loadout and then push a button and it'll pull that loadout out. So you can be more consistently getting the kit you want without needing to find every single item that you want.
Great, and we also have a video for this feature that I'll bring up. So when you activate a loadout, it'll assemble the items in sequence for you. Is that correct?
Yep, not in a specific sequence that will enable the loadout to work. So like it'll pull the uniform out first, for example, because it changes
Yeah.
your inventory.
Great. All right, let's move on to infantry anti-tank. And we're going to start off with a little intro video here for this.
Okay, people are very excited about this AT rifle. I just want I want to get ahead of the curve here. We've changed AT rifles dramatically, so don't get too excited. But first, before we get into that, tank gunner accuracy. So one of the things that we've changed for tanks. So I want to go back to what I said originally. We have changed a lot of different things in this game that seem unrelated to the infantry update, but they are in fact very related because we needed to increase their space. One thing we've noted about tanks is that they tended to oppress infantry because they had perfect accuracy all the time. So all you were really giving away by shooting enemy infantry was the shell, but there was no risk in not doing that. So tanks had a dominant role on the battlefield. Now they have accuracy. If you are moving, you're going to lose accuracy. If you take multiple shots, you're going to lose accuracy. So it's important to manage your mobility. Some vehicles are going to be better at this than others, but you'll have to manage your mobility, and you'll need to just manage your mobility, and you might not necessarily kill every infantryman, so you'll need supporting infantry or machine guns mounted to the guns or to the tanks in order to properly protect yourself.
Great, and then we'll have a little video demonstrating tank gunner accuracy. It might be a bit hard to see on stream, but the reticule bloom is changing as the vehicle is moving and as aim is being adjusted.
Yeah, you might notice it's not a lot of bloom, but the balance is pending. We need to get you guys' feedback in depth branch first before we solidify anything. All right, here's those promised AT rifle changes that we talked about. AT rifles are getting a complete overhaul. They're going to work very differently from the way that they did previously. This affects all AT rifles. This is they cause a suppression on vehicles. So now that tanks have stability, the AT rifles specifically target that accuracy. So if you have an AT rifle, you're shooting at an enemy tank, it will bloom their reticle, just like the machine guns do. So the machine guns bloom the reticles of enemy infantry. The AT rifles will bloom the reticles of enemy tanks and infantry. AT rifles will no longer roll to bounce. You don't have that. They don't bounce. They just always deal damage. This is something that is akin to the way machine guns damage structures. So like how most small arms don't damage structures, machine guns do, but very little. This is the same thing, but for tanks. The AT rifles will always damage tanks, but they do very little. Instead, they damage the vehicle's armor hit points. So this will make it easier for other tanks to get penetrating hits. So the heart of these changes is that AT rifles are a support weapon. They're not meant to kill enemy vehicles anymore. They're meant to suppress them and push them back, give infantry more space to move around, and give tanks less of a dominant role on that field. This is important for things like the subsystem damage or the leaks on large ships. These have in the past been predominantly used for breaking things or like tracking vehicles and causing holes. It's always been a little bit cheesy because of its fire rate was way higher than anything else that does this. So they no longer do that. Instead, they have this other supporting role.
Great, and we can have a little video clip demonstrating suppression.
Yeah, here are the new AT rifles. So these are all produced at facilities. Yeah, this one shoots twice, needs to crouch.
I was just gonna say some of the thematic background for some of these are like heavy modifications of some of the existing weapons that we've seen. Some of them are brand new, like this one, but some of them are like thematically like
such as
kind
this
of
one here.
Yeah, such as no, this laterally I don't think is. I think that's the wrong description.
Oh.
But the Booker Greyhound, which was the first one, it is like a modification of the Booker storm rifle. So thematically, so there's a bit of a theme with some of the weapons here.
Right. I was referring to the storm rifle. There might be an error in the description there.
I think the description there is wrong, but that's okay.
Okay. And finally, the Colonial Light AT rifle here, which is a 3 burst shot. And finally, we have this. Want to explain this one, Max?
Yeah, the Wardens have been lacking a significant AT weapon arsenal for a while. You guys have noticed the flask. This has been noted for a long time that the flask was extremely powerful. It's been changed, which you guys can read more about in the patch notes. But in order to do that, we needed to improve the Warden AT arsenal. So this is one of those things.
Great. I believe we're just a few minutes behind schedule here, but we'll move things along to infantry arms facility. We have a video to start off this part.
All right, let's get excited. This is this is going to be exciting for facility players, maybe not for everybody else. What's really exciting about this is that it is producing crates of equipment. We have not been able to allow you to produce crates of equipment until now, which means that we can start to put more stuff into facilities. The reason why we feel like this is a necessary thing is because facilities have a limited number of things you can output. Essentially, you can produce tanks and then some large items. But if you wanted to build a hyper specialized facility, or you were a solo who wanted to do something interesting in the backline, your options were pretty narrow in scope because all the big guys were just producing everything anyway. So it almost felt pointless. So we wanted to bring more stuff into facilities, and now we have that option.
Great. And just to touch on that point, you said that it's gonna start with, there's a starting point, and it's obviously not going to be everything. It's just going to be a couple of things that are new, but it's something we can explore over time, right?
Yeah, actually, something that might be exciting for a lot of players is the Small Arms Workshop modification. This is kind of like a player-built mass production factory. It produces very limited number of things in high volumes, things like the AT rifle ammo, SMG ammo, mortar rounds. You can mass produce those now in a place that's not the MPF. But we'll see how this goes. This is a bit of an experiment. We'll see how it goes.
Right. And this is the accompanying small gauge car that sits alongside the other two similar cars. And again, the transfer station. It's the crate version of the other transfer stations that we have already. Anything of note here, Max?
Not really. There's a few nuanced mechanics with this. You're not going to be able to deliver a shipping container directly to a frontline fob. I'm just going to warn you about that right now. But other than that, it's pretty much what you expect. It's similar to the other transfer stations.
All right. There's a one-off small feature that's, since we're talking about shipping containers here, to show off. It's a little bit of logistics, quality of life, kind of unrelated to a lot of other things, but in the context interact menu, it will now show the color of shipping containers, which will hopefully make managing stacks of shipping containers more simpler and more accessible now. All right, let's talk close quarters combat. And again, we'll start off with the video here. All right. So after many years, we finally have been able to come back around to melee, and our goal here was just to add a small amount of depth and skill to melee combat. Um, and a lot of that involves blocking and stamina management to make it more interesting than just running around wildly with a bayonet, which is fun, but not the most interesting thing here. So the big new additions are melee weapons for unique melee weapons for both factions. We have the dagger and the club. And there will be three new actions you can perform with these weapons. There's a quick attack, a block, and a charged attack. And you can read here how these three will function. Um, and bayonets have also had some changes. They've been revisited and updated with the new attacks. But unlike other weapons, they can't be used to block. And finally, a bit about knockdowns. If stamina is low, your character can be knocked down, which just creates a moment where you can um, go in for the killing blow. And yeah, that's mostly it for melee combat. It's something that we've been cognizant to make more interesting, but we obviously don't want to make it overpowered and turn the game into Anvil. So we're hoping that we're going to get feedback from you guys in the dev branch where we can tune the various attributes of these weapons. And another small note is that we've taken the opportunity here to update sounds on a bunch of the melee gameplay. So hopefully it's an entire fresh, fresh, fresh coat of paint across the melee side of things. And like we said here, the colonial gets the infantry dagger, and it just as a side note related to gameplay, this looks really good with the officer uniform. And we also have the raiding club, which looks good with the armored warden uniform. Not gameplay related, but in case you care about that sort of thing, they go well with those uniforms. Um, we don't have anything specific here on the shotguns, Max, but maybe you can talk about the shotguns for a moment.
Sure. Yeah, we have been wanting to make changes to shotguns for so many years. One of the first things I did at this company was try to balance the shotguns. Was unable to do it given the mechanics that it had, and so we finally had a chance to come around and change their mechanics. I won't get into how it works, except suffice to say that stability is still important for it. It's not just a blanket hits everything in front of you weapon. So you'll still need to aim it. You'll still have to shoot, but it can hit multiple targets, and hopefully the new mechanics will feel fresh.
And it does have a longer range, right? I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah, well, longer range than it did before, for sure.
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to infantry battlegrounds here. The most interesting thing in that video are the two dev bases we've made there, Max. That's all we gotta talk about are the dev bases.
All right. All garrison bunkers now have a husk. This is more significant than you guys might initially realize. Husks are tall. You'll see from that screenshot that they are big enough to conceal infantry and give infantry more of a place to run around and be safe from, artillery and from tanks. It's significant because in the past you guys might have built lines and lines of defenses facing each other with the expectation that when the bunker in front dies, the bunker in behind will take over. But with these husks, the idea is to give you guys a reason to not build a bunker. So we've added those mines, as you guys saw, and we've added these husks. So building a bunker in a bad position could be detrimental to the overall defense of, say, a larger fortification. We've changed the rules on these husks on garrisons. So you are no longer prevented from placing an AI defense directly adjacent to another AI defense. We felt this was necessary because building defenses has become so nuanced that only a small number of people who dedicate themselves to figuring out all the weird quirks of the system were allowed to build bunkers. We wanted to give you guys the freedom back to be able to place the bunker you wanted to build, to perform the role you wanted to fill, as opposed to just being forced into these small set of meta bunkers that you had to place. But the trade-off being that you want to be able to place bunkers and empty spaces for minefields and other things in order to create kill zones and more interesting bunker bases. We changed the howitzer garrison. I really want to expand on this because I know that the response to this is going to be scary. Artillery garrisons will only engage once, will only return fire for each artillery shell. So if you have 4 artillery garrisons in the same bunker, and you hit it with 1 artillery shell, only one artillery garrison will return fire at first. Then when you hit it a second time, the second one will aggress, and then I hit it a third time, and the third one will aggress, and so on. You cannot place 2 different artillery bunkers close to each other and hope that the splash will hit both and then engage 2 artillery bunkers at the same time. Each artillery shell will only initiate 1 artillery response. So why I feel like this is really important is this is not a nerf, or this is not a buff to artillery. It's a nerf to artillery traps, for those who know what that is. It's just specifically intended to prevent those overreactions where you accidentally hit a bunker once and suddenly you're getting splashed by 10 different howitzer garrisons. But if you are doing a concerted artillery op to attack a bunker, it's not going to make any difference. If you're planning to hit the bunker more than 4 times, then the bunker will respond with all of its howitzer garrison. So it's not a large ship buff because you're going to be hitting it hundreds of times. All the howitzer garrisons are going to engage pretty much immediately. I just really want to make that clear. It's not a buff to artillery in any way. It's just meant to prevent accidental hits from basically wiping out solo players.
All right. Tripod deployment.
The big change here is you can put havoc charges in buildings now, which was an oversight that's been there for a long time. Tripod weapons can be placed inside, so you can put them facing out of windows. It doesn't currently work for the fire ports in the forts, but we'll come back around to that.
And finally, you can plant havoc charges next to each other and not have the outcome be poor.
Yep. They won't daisy chain, but you can have multiple beside each other and not have them kill each other. Minefields. An anti-infantry mine. You can place it. We changed how you can place these, by the way. This and the tank mine. You now push B to place it, similar to the tripod. You don't just click. That was a bit of a weird one-off mechanic. You just needed to know. So now you push B and you place it just like a tripod. But it still goes in all the places you can put it. You can put it on bridges, on roads, and whatnot. What you can alternately do is put them into minefields. So infantry mines and tank mines, using a shovel, you can dig out like a minefield, and then you can upgrade that using these new mines into a minefield. And this has a couple of benefits. Firstly, a minefield cannot be wrenched. So you have to blow them up with high explosive or demolition damage. Secondly, they'll be hidden outside of 35 meters away. So if you're, for example, if you're an artillery spotter and you're trying to knock down an enemy bunker base, you're standing hundreds of meters away and you're calling in the artillery, you're killing the bunkers, but you're not seeing the mines. The mines are hidden from you. So these mines are meant to be like an alternate defense that's more, even though they're vulnerable to artillery damage, they're meant to be invisible to them. So you might, even if you knew the minefield was there, you might not be able to clear them all, at least not without getting closer. You'll also be able to use them to block areas of the map where you might not necessarily want to build an AI defense. In the past, you guys would have to build these big sprawling defenses to, like, say, plug a hole in the bulwark. Now you can just place these minefields, and you won't need to wait for bunker tech or anything. You could place a minefield just to stop partisans from getting through, or you might want to make them permanent. Another big advantage to these minefields is you can repair them. So if using B-mats and a hammer, just like any other structure, you can walk up to these and repair them. And repairing them regenerates those mines. So if, partisans are trying to clear a path through your minefield to get to the rear line by just running in and dying, you could just walk up with a hammer and B-mats, repair all the structures, and the mines come back. Similarly, they'll be repaired by maintenance supplies, because maintenance supplies, as you guys know, repairs at 1%. Every time the maintenance supply is consumed. So even if you just place a minefield and then support it with maintenance supplies and then leave it alone, random infantry are not going to negate the minefield. They're going to walk in, they'll die, and then over time the maintenance supplies will regenerate the minefield. So minefields can be more of a permanent structure that you can leave in the world.
So it's a lot more like an AI defense now.
Yeah, it's
in some ways.
It's sort of halfway between a field defense, which is like the tank traps and mines that you place on the ground, and an actual AI defense. It's somewhere in the middle there.
Right. And we'll have a quick video showing how that works.
All right, so again, I want to reiterate, the big change that we made here is that there should be reason for you to not place a bunker. Bunkers were historically the best way to defend an area by just spamming as many of them as you possibly could. What we're really hoping to see from this change is to give you guys more the meta for building bunkers should be more realistic looking front lines, not just sprawling concrete mega bases everywhere. The big critical change, again, that these bunkers, when destroyed, will leave behind a husk that's hard to remove and will block line of sight to AI defenses behind them. So just spamming bunkers shouldn't make sense anymore. Having minefields to replace those empty spaces where you might not necessarily want to put a bunker, we're going for something like in these screenshots. We're hoping that this sort of thing will seem reasonable, even if it's not perfect. And yeah, we're anxious to see what you guys do. For your dev branch feedback, focus when you talk about these defensive stuff, talk about what you guys think you will actually build in the live game and the reasons why. That will help us the most for determining balance around these changes.
All right, we got to move this along, but we got the medic update and another thing after that to talk about. So
All right, the big change. So, partisans. I know partisans have been hurting for a long time, and this might not necessarily be the thing you've always wanted, but the big change to medics is that you can spawn at a field hospital now instead of converting them to soldier supplies. So when you return a wounded soldier to a field station, you can set your spawn and just spawn there in place of creating a soldier supply. So this is the first time you'll be able to build a spawn point that doesn't require a CV. So maybe partisans might find a use for this by finding a sneaky backline area they could set up a little base at, and they might be able to operate out of there indefinitely if they're careful with returning their wounded soldiers to the back. We've added more states for critical wounded soldiers, so it should happen more often now. To be more opportunities to return them. And the big change here is we've changed the amount of soldier supplies you get is dependent on the structure that you return your patient to. So field hospitals won't produce as many soldier supplies as they did in the past. Actually, it might be the same. I'm not sure. But you can take that wounded soldier out of that field hospital and deliver him to a hospital at a town, for example, and get a lot more soldier supplies than you ever did before. So this, we're hoping, will create a Logi player loop where if you're noticing your frontline field hospitals are getting full of soldiers, wounded soldiers, it might be a wise idea to start pulling those out and delivering them to a rear line hospital to get more soldier supplies. It also means that these hospitals will act as impromptu or de facto spawn points in defensive cities. If a hospital has, presumably a hospital will be getting a lot of wounded soldiers, and they'll be pumping out a ton of respawns that you could potentially not turn back into soldier supplies, which means that these hospitals are reasonably vulnerable, but interesting location spawn points.
Yeah, the thing that excites me is adding a lot more value to the ambulance and the town hospitals, and having a reason to actually bring critically wounded soldiers there. So I'm personally really excited about this change.
And of course, a medical bunker. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
So this is the equivalent to a field hospital? Is that correct?
Yeah, but slightly better, slightly more important, I guess.
Okay.
The one difference here is that they do require bunker tech, so you need to get the bunker tech that used to require that used to give you the observation bunker will now instead give you this as well. And also, I think it's easier to get both of these so that it happens a little bit earlier. But again, the idea behind this is that you can put a bunker here that's relatively resistant somewhere where you think that a lot of fighting will happen, and people can use this as a spawn point to get closer to the front as opposed to spawning way back at another base. So it might be an interesting thing to incorporate into your defensive lines.
Great. All right, let's move on to the last portion here, final stretch. Let's talk new vehicles.
All right, there's not much to say about these tanks. I think you guys can see and tell exactly what they are. This is for the Wardens. They're getting another the base vehicle for the Outlaw. So this is the vehicle that the Outlaw is going to have to be built from. So you're going to have to bring this vehicle to the facilities in order to get an Outlaw. And I think it's important to note that all of the variants from this base vehicle have been changed, right? One of them is an AT rifle, for example. You guys know that one's going to see some significant changes. The other two have also been changed, the Outlaw and the, I can't remember the name of it right now, but the one with the launcher on the back.
There's too many tanks in the game, Max.
It's important. So okay, yeah, actually, let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And this one is pretty much what you guys see. It's a base vehicle, but it doesn't have any variants yet. The balance between these two new tanks is that the Warden vehicle is a case where the Warden tank lineup has more stuff that needs to go into facilities in order to get your vehicles, and the Colonials is the opposite. We're putting more stuff into the base vehicle stuff that you guys can build, because there has been an unintended asymmetry there, where the Colonials were more dependent on facilities than Wardens. Now it should be a little more balanced.
Great. Here's the
And
other view here.
and we'll put out some of these renders, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
Since we're kind of shuffling through
post
them.
all the image. Yeah.
Yep. And this is just a cool hospital train. This will be like the hospital. It's going to be an extremely powerful way to get soldier supplies. You can spawn at this, similar to to all the other medical tents. So, like, this is a mobile spawn point that, as long as you're bringing wounded soldiers to it, you can spawn here. So this will be one of those end game vehicles, similar to the long range artillery cannon that's available to both factions.
Awesome.
Very cool.
All right. Well, that's it for the infantry update. It arrives on November the 18th. The war start will happen on that date as well. There's a couple of other things in the schedule I want to go through. We're gonna do a Reddit Q&A after this, as we usually do for these large updates. We'll hop in there and get that up shortly after, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. The dev branch opens today. It will be phased, assuming everything goes according to plan. Sometimes there's last minute setbacks, as you guys have experienced in the past, but the plan is to get out there this afternoon. November 13th will be the pre-patch war. That's when we apply an initial update to test out the new build in a real world setting. That'll happen on the 13th. And then finally, the release date will be November 18th. So November 18th will be the day when you can play the infantry update and when the war will start. Now, before we end this, there is one more cool thing we have to show. We've been working on something else for Foxhole that we want to give you guys an early sneak peek on. So without further ado, here it is. All right.
More stuff nobody asked for.
Foxhole Airborne. So yeah, this is the first time we've announced two big updates in one stream. So it is a new thing for us. Foxhole Airborne is the next big thing, big chapter, big whatever you want to call it for Foxhole. As you know, we have land and naval, and now we're going to be bringing air warfare to Foxhole. I'm sure everyone's going to have a lot of questions about this, and but most of the details we're going to leave for next year. The focus in the coming weeks and is going to be on the infantry update. But we just did want to give you guys an early look at this. But there is a few things we can touch upon, sort of the big questions. Air warfare will exist alongside naval and ground in the same sandbox. So you will be flying planes around in the same map, and interacting with players on the ground. Every player will all just sort of be in the same place. Planes will be piloted by players. And yes, you will be able to paradrop out of planes, which are also driven by players behind enemy lines. So, yeah, those are the big parts of this that we can talk about today. And I want to mention that the content you saw in the trailer is only a sneak peek of what's coming. So there will be more features and content for both factions when the update comes. So if you didn't see something for your faction, don't worry. There's a lot more to come, and we don't want to start any big controversies over why one side didn't get what, at least yet.
It's a preview trailer. It's one of the first times we're kind of doing like a preview trailer. We wanted to show you guys kind of what we've been working on. One of the kind of some of the exciting things, and I think I've said for years that I don't really think that Foxhole is complete without air. To me, it's always been a necessity. It's something that's so indicative of this particular era that we're inspired by with warfare, and I think it's going to be like a really, really cool addition. And some of the stuff that we've seen internally is like crazy.
Right? Imagine a World War II game without planes. Like, but come on.
We've done it for years, but I feel like it's just that it's the icing that is needed to finish off the not the game, but like the complete experience of the warfare that we're inspired by here with Foxhole.
That's right. So we've been working on this throughout the year. There's still a lot more work to be done, and you guys might be wondering why we're announcing it so early this time. Unlike Naval Warfare and Inferno, we just really want to get the word out as early as possible this time, so we can develop the update more openly, and we don't have to try to keep it a secret, which is actually very hard to do. Things tend to leak, and this way we can also everyone kind of knows what to expect, and we're excited to see all the discourse among the community, see you guys talking about it. And the other thing is we just really wanted to give ourselves more time and space for this one. We really want to make sure we can make this a really polished experience in the first release. So, and to also touch on the trailer a bit, this is also something new. There's a lot of new things for us here today. As you noticed, some of the scenes in the trailer are pre-rendered, and some of them are using the in-game footage. This is, something new we've done. It's been a learning experience, and we just happy we're able to find a way to get the word early out with you guys without having to actually have the full release almost ready. So this is our way of doing that. And finally, the target release right now is next summer, so there is still quite time before it'll be ready. But just so excited to finally be able to get this one off our chest and let you guys know. So that concludes the stream. Hope to see you guys in the Q&A in the dev branch. And yeah, thanks for watching again. And Matt,
as always, stay foxy. I gotta come up with like an animal like for air that I can say.
You're gonna need one for Anvil too.
Oh no!
Stay Anvil-y.
Stay
which,
sharp,
you guys.
Yeah. Bye everybody.
Stay sharp. I like that.
Bye.
See you guys.